to leave the boys and their coach where they are and supply them with food, water, and medicine until the rainy season ends in October. Authorities say the boys appear skinny, but overall they are in good health. The problem is some of the Navy SEALs who are inside that cave taking care of them say some of those boys simply are not strong enough to make it out on their own right now, but they are working on getting them nourished, and so if need be, they can make the trip out. Sandra.
Trace, I heard earlier some of the boys were responding to rescue workers when they arrived, and they wanted an update on the World Cup.
Because they're soccer players, right? These are 11 soccer players, right. And they were fascinated by the World Cup going in, and they're still fascinated even though they've been inside that cave for 14 days.
Amazing stuff. We'll continue to follow that story. We hope the absolute best for those rescue efforts as they are ongoing. Trace Gallagher in our West Coast newsroom, thank you. Well, that's it for our show tonight. The story. What did you think of the show? I love to see your thoughts. Send them to me at Sandra Smith Fox on Twitter. I'm on Facebook as well if you'd like to weigh in there. And I will see you bright and early again tomorrow morning. America's Newsroom. Join us daily from 9 a.m. to noon Eastern Time. Tucker Carlson is up next.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Hope you had a great 4th of July. While you were celebrating the birth of our country, some on the left were bemoaning its very existence. Vox.com commemorated Independence Day with a piece entitled 3 Reasons the American Revolution Was a Mistake. Progressives despise Donald Trump so much they've begun to dislike the country that elected him. Hate has clouded their vision and distorted their values completely. For generations, for example, liberals championed free speech and privacy and due process. Now they lead the charge against civil liberties and all who dare to defend them. Alan Dershowitz has been a liberal icon for 50 years, a stalwart defender of civil liberties. Just this morning, he was denounced by the left as an agent of the Kremlin, of Vladimir Putin himself. His crime? Suggesting that the president might also be protected by the Bill of Rights, just like everybody else. Not allowed. Professor Dershowitz joins us in just a minute to explain what happened to him. Meanwhile, signs of growing extremism in this country on the left are everywhere. Just yesterday, a Congolese immigrant shut down the Statue of Liberty, our Statue of Liberty, to protest the Trump administration's immigration policies. The left applauded that. But take 3 steps back and think about what you're watching right here. Congo is a war-ravaged hellscape, a country noted for mass rape and cannibalism. Imagine escaping a country like that and being welcomed in our country, the United States. You'd be grateful, wouldn't you? Many Congolese are grateful. This person is not grateful at all. She took over one of our monuments to scream about how racist we are, and progressives support her. They have gone insane. On MSNBC, New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg explained that 81-year-old Justice Anthony Kennedy somehow betrayed America by daring to retire from the Supreme Court. Watch this.
This is Kennedy betraying the country. The Democrats could have done very little.
He's 81 years old and served 30 years. He's not betraying the country.
We should thank him for his service. To not
Why
let
do you have
Trump,
to demean people in that making your point?
Because they are destroying this country.
Retiring at 81 is betrayal because it's inconvenient to their political plans. And then there's this, yet more casual racism from MSNBC. Notice how it's just assumed that there's something distasteful or even immoral about hiring someone of a specific race and gender. The left used to believe in judging people on the content of their character, not on the color of their skin. That seems like ancient history now. Watch.
For the president, it's going to be all about the personal connection, who he feels comfortable with in the moment.
So you're saying he's going to pick the man, the white man. 90% of Donald Trump's elections for U.S. attorneys and federal judges were white men.
What happened to liberals? Well, a lot of things. One, they lost power, and that drove them off the deep end. They plan to get their power back, no matter what it takes. A new book by Professor David Ferris is called It's Time to Fight Dirty, and it explains how the left plans to do it. Here's the summary of the book from Politico. Quote, grant statehood to D.C. and Puerto Rico and break California into 7 with the goal of adding 16 new Democrats to the Senate. expand the Supreme Court and the federal courts, packing them with liberal judges, move to multi-member House districts to roll back the effects of partisan gerrymandering, pass a new Voting Rights Act, including nationwide automatic voter registration, felon enfranchisement, and an end to voter ID laws, grant citizenship to millions of undocumented immigrants, creating a host of new Democratic-leaning voters. As Ferris puts it in the book, quote, Republicans have always feared that immigration would change the character of American society. Democrats should reward them with their very worst nightmare. Remember that paragraph. It is the blueprint for what we're about to see. They're going to tell you it's about civil rights or some other principle they pretend to care about, but they're lying. It's about seizing power and holding it. That's their only aim. They're deadly serious about it. While you were grilling in the backyard last night, they were plotting, in effect, a coup. Ethan Behrman is a radio host in California, and he joins us now. Ethan, this really kind of says it all. Conservatives fear that the point of liberal immigration policy is to replace American voters with more pliant, obedient foreigners who will support the Democratic Party. Here you have a guy writing a blueprint for the Democratic takeover of the government saying, that's exactly right, that's our plan. Why shouldn't that offend and terrify the rest of us?
Well, it shouldn't offend and terrify, because what it is it's taking a page from the Republican playbook, right? So right now we just talked about you just talked about the judicial appointees from Trump, for example. That's packing the courts. What about the idea that the Republicans were the party of no for 6 years under President Obama? I'm not a fan of the divisiveness that is happening right now in politics. But why shouldn't the Republicans play the same way that the Democrats play the same way the Republicans do, which is just to oppose?
Look, I will concede this point, which is that politics takes place in the political process, and both parties play hardball, and both parties lack principle, and both parties do things that are embarrassing when they're exposed. But importing immigrants for the sake of changing the political balance and the culture of the country is a different level. We've never seen that before in American history. That strikes me as completely wrong and disempowering to American citizens whom the government is supposed to be representing. Like, it actually is immoral. I don't know how anyone could defend that.
Well, it's interesting because look, if that's the exclusive aim of bringing an immigrant in, that would be immoral. But we should also look at the Republicans and big business, where the Republicans were complicit, bringing in immigrants. Because why do immigrants cross the border?
You're right.
Often it's for a job.
You're not going to get any. You're absolutely right. You're not going to get any argument from me out of this. One of the main reasons that immigrants come to this country is because business groups benefit from it. I absolutely agree with you 100%, which is, it makes it more amazing to me that the left has made common cause with them and now supports it. But don't you think it is fair for Americans of all political beliefs to say, you know, the government exists to represent our interests? You can't bring in ringers because you don't like how the last election went.
Well, there are a couple of different issues there. But first of all, one of the ways that's such a big issue, you know, when we talk about the protests that we were talking about with the Statue of Liberty, among other, you know, the big protests this last weekend, is immigrants have rights here too. So even if you're not a citizen, anybody on U.S. soil is covered by the 14th Amendment. The courts have ruled on that. So how we treat people really does matter. And I don't like when we use people as political pawns. However, the issue is how we treat people. Are we welcoming people to the United States? Diversity.
But what about how they treat us? Wait, hold on. There's a lot about how we treat them. How about how they treat us? If you come here from Congo, there are a lot of great Congolese. I'm not attacking the Congolese. I'm attacking the Congo, which is one of the worst countries in the world. So you come here from there, and you immediately take over one of our monuments and accuse us of racism. Where's the gratitude part where you express happiness that you're in America and thankfulness for all the things that you got from this country? How do you wind up at a place where you're taking over the Statue of Liberty when you're not even an American? I don't understand. Why should we put up with that? Why should we like that?
But it is a great tradition here, and many of us are very upset about the separation of the families at the border, the massive reductions in legal immigration. It was just announced that the president himself just is rolling back through his administration. The Army program that allows people to become citizens. Again, this diversity is a great strength. Many wonderful people have come to the United States and become citizens through these programs.
Look, I'm not saying that Americans or even people in America don't have a right to express their views. I'm for the First Amendment. That's why I'm not a liberal. But explain to me, and be honest, are you comfortable with someone escaping a country like Congo, showing up in our country, and immediately denouncing the country that took her in and saved her as racist? Does that bother you at all? Because it bothers me a lot.
She actually established a personal. She's a personal trainer in New York City. She's established a business. She's participating in our process. That doesn't offend me at all.
It doesn't offend you that someone can escape from Congo and then come and shut down the Statue of Liberty on the 4th of July? Really? It doesn't bother you at all?
No, I think it's bringing attention to a really serious problem that we're having right now.
What would happen if you went to Congo, if you showed up in Congo, and, you know, you became a personal trainer in Congo, and you were there a couple years, and you decide, you know, the people of Congo are disgusting, and I'm going to take over the most sacred monument in Congo and shut it down to lecture the people of Congo about how immoral they are. How do you think they'd respond if you did that?
Well, probably not well, and the great news is we are a country ruled by laws and a constitution.
But don't you think there's something wrong? Don't you think it's something wrong? I mean, shouldn't immigrants be grateful? I mean, isn't that kind of like a baseline request that you be grateful to be here? We're letting you in. Well, we're giving you money. We're giving you lots of free stuff, as we do. Shouldn't you be a little thankful? No? Or is that too much?
Who's to say she's not thankful? She's probably thankful in many different ways, but also sees a problem with the way that we're treating people right now.
So why doesn't she write a letter to the editor?
Demonizing the other.
Or you go on MSNBC. She has to shut down our most famous monument on the 4th of July. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that is part of a great process. It was non-violent. It was non-destructive. It just happened to be annoying to some people, and apparently that's the biggest offense.
Yeah, pretty big offense. Ethan, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks,
Victor
Doctor.
Davis Hanson is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, a lifelong Californian, a classic scholar, many other things, and a frequent guest on the show, and we're grateful for that. He joins us tonight. So, Professor Hanson, you heard the excerpt from the book that I just read aloud, where this professor is unveiling a blueprint for taking back power and says out loud what many of us have suspected for a long time, that the core point of immigration is to change the population of the country and to put progressives in power forever. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, that's what an open border does, and I think the Democratic Party didn't have an agenda that appealed to 51% of the people, especially under the Electoral College, and so they feel that they've flipped states like California or Nevada or Colorado or New Mexico, and that's a winning formula, but it didn't prove that way even with the help of immigration. I think all of this, though, Tucker, you put your finger on it. Barack Obama got elected twice, but he was an ungodly disaster for the Democratic Party. They lost the supermajority, they lost the Senate, they lost the House, they lost 1,000 local and state offices. They're going to lose the Supreme Court, and they can't come to grips with the fact that they control popular culture, sports, universities, and media. But that translates into this type of street theater you reference. It doesn't transfer into actual political power, and they're very frustrated. And then the second thing is, everybody said Trump was good. The Never-Trumpers told us that Trump would be a moderate or a liberal. He wasn't. The Heritage Foundation said he was more conservative in his first 2 years than Ronald Reagan. The left said he was going to implode, or the Mueller investigation, or impeachment, or the emolument clause, or they were going to sue under the 25th. None of that happened. So Trump is almost 50% approval rating. And then the final thing, there's no alternate agenda. We don't know what your speaker, your guest, what do they feel about taxes? They want more government, more regulation, less? Is the Iran deal good or bad? We don't hear any of that. Instead, they fixate on somebody like Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, a kind of an obscure 28-year-old who won an election with 20% turnout, and suddenly that's a metaphor for a brave new world. So it's a frustration that they don't translate their cultural influence into actual raw political power.
That is so smart. Victor Davis Hanson, the overview always in the most clear way. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Well, for many years, for many decades, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz was an icon among liberals, a stalwart defender of civil rights. He's an eminent scholar. He's always fought hard and convincingly for his beliefs, even when they were unpopular, and they have been unpopular. But now Dershowitz has been rendered a non-person because he won't demand President Trump's impeachment. MSNBC went further and suggested that Dershowitz is somehow a dupe of Vladimir Putin. Watch.
He's upset because doing the bidding of Donald Trump, and by extension Vladimir Putin, by attacking Robert Mueller III, He's not allowed to come to the trendiest clam bakes without feeling a cold shoulder.
Professor Alan Dershowitz joins us tonight. Professor Dershowitz, to start with a factual question, are you doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin?
Of course not. I hate Vladimir Putin. I hate what he stands for. I hate tyranny anywhere in the world. I'm not doing the bidding of Donald Trump. I oppose Donald Trump's immigration policies, his approach to Charlottesville, and when I have an opportunity, I tell him that. I am making the same arguments about civil liberties I've made for 50 years and that I would be making if Hillary Clinton had been elected president and people were trying to impeach her. But at people talk about parties as if that's something serious. I don't care about parties. I'm invited to too many. But at a party this week on Martha's Vineyard, a woman said, if Dershowitz were here tonight, I'd stab him through the heart. This is a Martha's Vineyard woman saying she would stab me through the heart. Another Martha's Vineyarder, a professor at MIT, Professor Nicholas Negroponte, who has previously said he wished there were no New York Times and that people only got the news that represented their own personal worldview so that they wouldn't hear opposing points of view. The same guy who said soon there'll be a pill that you can swallow and you'll learn French overnight so you won't have to go through the process of learning French. He's leading the campaign to try to get other people to shun me in every way and not to engage with me. Now they're losing because the vast majority of people, even in Martha's Vineyard and in Chilmark, can't stand people who try to stop speech and try to stop debate. So it's backfiring. But the other point that's very important is they did this to try to hurt me, but the end result is they're helping Donald Trump. They are strengthening Donald Trump's hands. The people who try to shun me are giving Donald Trump and his base an argument about what the radicals are doing. I have one point to correct from what you said. I don't think what you're describing is a liberal phenomenon. I'm a liberal. I think it's a hard left radical phenomenon. I think liberals still support free speech. Liberals still support due process. But the Democratic Party and the left has been taken over by radicals who have no interest in due process. They're like Negroponte. They only want their truth to prevail. They don't want any dissent. They don't want any argument. It's happening on university campuses. And when you have professors like Negroponte giving the students the lesson, it's okay not to engage, not to talk to people you disagree with, it's a terrible reflection of what's going on in the United States of America. So put aside Martha's Vineyard, put aside clam bakes and cocktail parties, and put aside what Morning Joe was saying. By the way, I challenge Morning Joe to have me on a show when he mocks me so that I can respond. It's easy and kind of unfair to attack somebody and then not give him an opportunity to respond. Let's see if he has the guts to put me on a show so that I can tell his viewers the truth.
Well, nobody wants to engage, and that's the point you've been making over and over, I think, and valiantly so, that it's not a question of people disagreeing with each other. It's a question of one side trying to shut down the other and prevent it from expressing an alternative view.
I agree with that, terrifying. And that is so bad for America, and it's so bad for young people to see the examples that Professor Negroponte and others are giving. We know the truth, capital T. We don't need to hear any dissenting points of view. It's okay scary. If you just hear my point of view. That's un-American.
Totally. Professor, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, a lawsuit targeting the Trump campaign and its advisors just got tossed out of court. One of those advisors, Roger Stone, joins us next to tell us what exactly happened and what's going to happen next. Stay tuned. Well, a federal judge has just dismissed a lawsuit filed by 2 Democratic National Committee donors against the Trump campaign. Their suit accused the campaign and its advisors of plotting to hack the DNC and publish internal emails. That lawsuit might be on stronger ground, of course, if the DNC had turned its server over to the FBI to be investigated. It didn't. We still don't know where the server is. The FBI has requested it multiple times. We don't even know if the Mueller investigation has taken a look at that server. Many mysteries at the heart of this. But Roger Stone was one of the targets in that dismissed lawsuit. He also wrote the book Stone's Rules. He joins us tonight. Roger, thanks a lot for coming on. So what was the point of this lawsuit?
Well, Tucker, before we get there, I want to thank you for writing a warm introduction for Stone's Rules, my Sun Tzu's kind of art of the war, my rules of the road, my hard-won maxims. It was very useful in this fight because, you see, this is a tactic known as lawfare, where Ivy League snots in a nonprofit blessed by Barack Obama file frivolous, even defamatory, but expensive lawsuits against you in which they weave together crazy left-wing conspiracy theories, but they present no evidence. Stop me if you've heard this one. Roger Stone worked with the Russians to hack the DNC and gave the material to Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, Donald Trump, take your choice. It's a fairy tale. They presented no evidence of this fairy tale at court. Now, it is true the lawsuit was ultimately dismissed on jurisdictional grounds, but it proved, if you read the judge's questioning, she laughed at them in terms of a conspiracy. Recognize, Tucker, I was being sued not for defamatory speech or false speech or hate speech, but for constitutionally protected speech when I commented on something WikiLeaks had already published.
So do we know, let's just go back a little bit to the core of the story, which is the server, whose contents did wind up on the internet and in newspapers. But we still, I don't think we have ever seen proof of how that happened. Where is the server in question?
Well, this brings up a second lawsuit. This lawsuit against me was not filed by the DNC, but by some left-wing nonprofit, and they used it for fundraising. The DNC, when they learned that we were going to ask for their server in discovery, which my able attorneys, Smith and Bushell, did immediately in a letter, they went to court and now want to delay their own lawsuit until after the election. You know, this is outrageous because their lawsuit against me, against the Trump campaign, against Jared Kushner, against Julian Assange, against the Russian state, against WikiLeaks, against the Republican National Committee, against Bozo the Clown, I mean, it's a four-show lawsuit, would have opened the doors to see those servers. Now they're not in such a rush to go to discovery. How about that?
Do we know who has possession of those servers right now?
Well, I don't think we do know. I mean, that's a question for the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Is there bleach involved? That's the real question. Because the myth that the Russians hacked the DNC can only be proved with inspection. We know that there's substantial forensic evidence cited in an excellent story in The Nation magazine that points to, based on download speeds and other computer jargon that I recognize a few experts in, Bill Benny, Ray McGovern, and others, more likely this data was downloaded to a thumb drive, portable drive, and spirited out the back door.
Well, it sure seems that way.
At a minimum.
But we have no idea. As far as I can tell, we called over the DNC today. We don't know where those servers are. We will find out, I hope. Roger Stone, thank you very much.
But hundreds of thousands of dollars for this dismissal, and I still have to pay for a Senate, a House, and Mr. Mueller's investigation. Thank you, Tucker. Great to be with you.
Best of luck. Nigel Farage has become the most dangerous man in Britain, apparently, according to the UK government. The president, our president, visiting the United Kingdom next week. The British government reportedly desperate to keep the two from meeting. Nigel Farage joins us next to explain what's going on there. President Trump is set to visit the UK next week, and one of the top priorities of Her Majesty's government is apparently keeping Trump away from Nigel Farage, the leader of Brexit. According to the Daily Telegraph, which quotes an unnamed government source, British officials have told our White House that our president cannot meet with Farage during his visit. The newspaper calls that demand, quote, a red line for the British government. In other words, an absolute demand. Downing Street denies that that ban exists. Nigel Farage himself joins us tonight to clear this up. Nigel, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
A red line. Our president banned from meeting you. Can that be true?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, don't forget, the establishment in Britain hate me. They see me as the man that forced the Brexit referendum upon them, helped get it through. They now have to implement something they don't believe in. And worse still, when Donald Trump becomes the president, you know, and I was the only British politician that said he was the right thing, not just for America, but for the Western world. Trump tweeted, "Wouldn't Farage be good?" as the British ambassador in Washington. And ever since that day, they've been paranoid about my relationship with the president. But, you know, when you think about it, who on earth is some official in 10 Downing Street to tell the US president who he should and shouldn't meet? I'm sorry to say, but it paints my government ahead of this visit in a very bad light.
It certainly does. Do you know if the president is abiding by this? Do you have any plans to meet with him when he comes to your country?
Well, look, let's be honest about this. Relations between number 10 Downing Street and the White House have not gone as they ought to have done over the last 18 months, 2 years. I would not wish in any way to cause any embarrassment for the president coming over here, so I won't push it. But Tucker, if he wants to see me for a cup of coffee, I'll go and see him.
I wonder if your government is aware that it's on the wrong side of history as it's unfolding in Europe. Every other country in Europe, even Western Europe, nationalism is reawakening as people remember why borders are important, national identity is real, et cetera, et cetera. The UK government doesn't seem to be aware that this is happening.
No, it's very odd. I mean, Brexit was an earthquake in British politics, but the problem was the day after the People's Revolt, the power was handed straight back to those who'd opposed the referendum and the result in the first place. So we're in a very awkward place. But, you know, I've spent this week in Strasbourg with the parties that are now governing Italy, with the party that is now governing Austria. I've met the Polish Prime Minister, who says, look, please, Brussels, don't treat us like the communists used to. The revolution is sweeping right through Europe, and the British at the moment are impervious to it. But you know what? That situation can't hold.
Yeah, I mean, so how long will you, I mean, your country is basically run by a small group of very rich finance people and immigrants. The power is in London, right?
But the power is in London, yeah.
Right, but how long can that continue to be the case? Well, I mean, the promise of Brexit is that people outside of London have a voice in this too. Do you think they will?
Well, Brexit proved that outside of big business, big banks and big politics, people can have their say and they can win. And right now, we have, I think, I'm being honest with you, the worst Prime Minister I've seen in my lifetime, who is frustrating Brexit. If we go on with this course of action in this country, then Brexit will be not the last earthquake, but the first earthquake. More change will come. In the end, people's views will be heard. You know, Trump is part of this, Italy is part of this, Hungary is part of this, Austria is part of this. Do you know what, Tucker? Freedom is coming back to the Western world.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to pretend it's a democracy, you have to kind of pay attention to the people who live in your country, it seems to me.
Absolutely.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much. Great to see you. Thank you. Well, the threat of Chinese espionage isn't just the stuff of spy movies. Turns out your television, this sounds kooky, but it's actually real, could be feeding information to the Chinese Communist Party. Sounds crazy. It's not. Stay tuned. Tonight we continue our ongoing series about China and how it has subtly expanded its power and reach into parts of American life you never would have expected. Our leaders oblivious, of course, as they fuss over the Russia threat. Well, one growing player in the television market is a company called Hisense. It's owned by the Chinese government. It sells high-definition smart TVs. You may have seen their ads on the air during the World Cup. Like most smart TVs, Hisense televisions have microphones in their remotes. They're designed to work with voice-operated programs like Alexa from Amazon or Google Assistant. Hisense's privacy policy gives it the right to collect the names and addresses of its users. That's your personal data potentially going directly to the hands of the Chinese government. It's not outlandish. They could use these televisions for espionage. WikiLeaks revelations last year showed the CIA has already developed the ability to spy through smart televisions. If they can do it with private TVs, China could easily do it with televisions made by them. At least a few people are worried about this. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida told this show he is, quote, definitely concerned about Hisense's espionage threat. So far, not many others seem to be paying attention. How worried should we be about this? Michael Pillsbury is the director for Chinese strategy at Hudson Institute. He's the author of perhaps the single best book on the emerging China threat, The 100-Year Marathon, China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower. Dr. Pillsbury joins us tonight. Dr. Pillsbury, thanks a lot for coming on. This is one of those topics that's so outlandish sounding, you almost risk being called a nut bringing it up, but it's real.
Right.
Should we be concerned about this?
I think so. Part of it has to do, Tucker, with the underestimation of Chinese technology. Who would have thought, 20 or 30 years ago, that China could have this kind of a television that could eavesdrop on basically millions of Americans in their living rooms? I think we've not taken China very seriously, and we're going to have a number of surprises probably in the coming year. This is one of them. They've got a full court press now on the espionage front, trying to understand why President Trump is putting these tariffs on them tomorrow.
Right.
They don't understand that. They've been reassured by their friends in America this could never happen. Now it happens in about another 6 hours. So this is a cause for a great intelligence collection by the Chinese.
So if we're concerned about the threat of espionage from having Chinese-made TVs in our homes, what about the fact that China has made a lot of the architecture of our internet in the United States?
That's even worse problem, frankly. And it's one explanation for why the Defense Department forbids DoD employees from buying Chinese cell phones. Has to do with the discovery many years ago that China was targeting our military and learning our military weaknesses, sometimes through open collection. They would even ask, I remember there's a very famous story now that an American admiral was on an aircraft carrier, Chinese delegation came in. They asked him, what's the weakest point of your aircraft carrier? And as a friendly guy, this is a friendly exchange program, he said, well, the skin of the aircraft carrier on the very bottom is very thin. We're protected well against the sides from cruise missile attack. And we store all of our bombs down there. So if the thin skin on the bottom would be exploded, we would lose all the ammunition on the carrier. The Chinese then bought a torpedo from the Russians that goes under the carrier, turns up, and explodes on that thin skin. So you see the level of trust is very high in visiting Chinese delegations. So we openly have been revealing our own problems and weaknesses to them in the trade area as well as the military area. This whole idea that China is our friend, our best friend in some ways in the whole world, this has been pushed for about 30 or 40 years since the Nixon-Kissinger opening. And I think slowly President Trump is trying to turn the corner and talk about them as competitors, about to surpass us. In the size of their economy. But there's so many parts of this that I'm really glad you've been doing this series on what I would call the China Challenge.
I hate to think that American business executives have sold out their own country in their dealings with China, but it sounds in some cases like they have.
Objectively, yes, but that's not how they see it. Since they've been told by so many pro-China books that China is our friend and we have to cooperate, they don't see a kind of competition or rivalry going on. That's my best explanation. I don't think they're traitors. They're just basically ignorant about what China is up to.
How could anyone ever believe that China was our friend? That's like carbs make you thin. It's self-evidently stupid.
Well, suppose Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, several presidents in a row all said China is our friend. Wouldn't that go a long way toward excusing businessmen from being more protective of their technology? I'll give you some good news. Just recently, the House of Representatives, 400-2, approved cracking down on Chinese investment coming into America that's targeted on our high-tech or national security industries. This is very good news. Passed the Senate by a very strong majority, too. So actions beginning to be taken by the Congress. Whether this will be enough in time to sort of choke off what the Chinese have already obtained from us in terms of high tech and intelligence secrets. I don't know.
But your book has done more than any document to wake people up to the threat, so I'm grateful for that.
This book's been heavily criticized, Tucker, as too alarmist, and I'm not a friend of China like I used to be. So keep that in mind.
Well, you're a Chinese speaker, and you know what you're talking about, and this book is true, it turns out. Michael Pillsbury, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again. Time for final exam. Katie Pavlich won 4 weeks in a row. Can she make it to 5, and can you keep up with her at home? Find out next. Time now for final exam, where 2 wizened news experts compete to see who recalls the most about what happened this past week. Tonight, Town Hall's Katie Pavlich. She's dominated final exam 4 weeks in a row. Her brave challenger this week, one of the most popular people here in the Fox Bureau, our chief congressional correspondent, Mike Emanuel. You all ready?
You ready?
I wish you'd give me somebody easier.
I always say that, and then they do a really good job.
Oh, yeah. But then they lose in the end. We're counting on you, Mike.
Okay.
All right. We're ready.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, here are the rules. You know them, but we'll repeat them anyway. Hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You have to wait until I finish asking it in order to answer. You can answer once I acknowledge by saying your name. Each correct answer is worth 1 point. You get it wrong, you lose a point. Best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
Ready.
Let's do it.
Ready to go.
Question 1. A new study shows conclusively that people live longer if they regularly drink which hot beverage? Katie.
Coffee.
Coffee? I thought it stunted your growth. Is it coffee?
A large study that followed people over a 10-year period found that those who drank coffee were up to 15% less likely to die than those who didn't. The benefit was the same for those who drank 2 or 3 cups or even 8 cups a day.
It has antioxidants in it. Doesn't everybody know that?
Well, that means I'm in good health, but I'm losing now, so.
Let's trade off. Another myth of childhood bites the dust. Coffee's good for you. Question 2. This one multiple choice. Overwhelmed with homelessness, which American city has come up with an unusual solution to deal with the crisis by paying for plane tickets, not bus tickets, plane tickets to fly vagrants out of their city? Is it A, San Francisco, B, Portland, Oregon, C, Seattle, Washington? Katie.
Seattle, Washington.
Seattle, Washington. Home of a major aircraft manufacturer, so we'll see if you're right. Is it Seattle?
Well, Seattle's got a new solution for its homeless problem. Taxpayer money to buy plane tickets to send homeless people to stay with family with more stable housing in other cities.
How did you know that?
Well, I just was in Portland and saw the problem there.
Yes.
I've heard a lot about San Francisco. I don't think they would be smart enough to fly vagrants out. So Seattle is the only logical conclusion.
Right.
So at this rate, she's got a big lead, and we don't even know if my buzzer works.
Let's see. Good question.
We should maybe try.
You know what? It's always wise to blame the equipment. Let's see if it works this time. Question 3. Which billionaire celebrity says she is no longer considering a run for president because it would, quote, kill her? Billionaire celebrity no longer planning to run for president. Katie Pavlich.
Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey. Is that really her last? She has a last name? Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey. Is it Oprah?
Oprah, once again, smacking down talk of a political future, saying running for president would kill her. I feel like I could not exist. I would not be able to do it. It's not a clean business. It would kill me.
Do I get any parting gifts?
You get the admiration of millions. Notice that Oprah says, unlike television, politics is not a clean business.
Right, well, we know it's all squeaky clean.
That's a little disingenuous. Okay, question 4. Another multiple choice. Competitive eater, and I know this man personally, a great person, Joey Chestnut, once again won the Nathan's hot dog eating contest this Wednesday. He broke his own record by devouring how many hot dogs? Was it A, 54, B, 64, C, 74 hot dogs? Mike Emanuel.
I'll go 74.
That seems impossible.
That's crazy.
I know, but
let's see if is it.
I got nothing to lose.
Good point. Is it 74?
He took the mustard belt again this year, beating his own record. He downed 74 hot dogs in just 10 minutes.
Ooh, man, I murdered it. And, I was in for 75, but at 74, I'm happy.
Clearly, yes.
I do too. Hebrew National.
Yes.
Impressive. Final question. This is maybe the weirdest question we've ever asked on Final Exam. There is a video of a bear, not a tame bear, if there is such a thing, a wild bear, pinging around the internet. It shows the bear relaxing in a hot tub while drinking a tequila-based cocktail. Which cocktail was it the bear was drinking? Mike Emanuel.
Margarita.
Come on now. It's too weird. Was it a margarita?
A wild bear takes a dip in a hot tub and steals a man's margarita. How dare you? A homeowner in California catching the bear on camera.
I sense
after
a
climbed his
here.
fence.
The
bear
weirder
later
the
took a
question
nap.
gets,
That's
the more
right.
likely you are to answer it correctly.
I know food and drink. Okay.
So do bears. Bears do too, apparently.
Well, you didn't snatch the championship from Katie, but you did a great job.
That was fun.
A late surge.
Nonetheless.
Congratulations,
Thank
Katie.
you, sir. We
Katie,
appreciate
you're going to get your 5th in a row commemorative Eric Wemple terror mug.
Just because we never forget.
That's it. We never forget that moment.
We
That's
never
exactly
forget
right.
this
Eric
time
Wemple was
in our
once here.
history.
Thank you both. That
Awesome
was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you
Great to
next week.
Thank you.
That's it for Final Exam. Pay attention to the news all week. Here's your incentive. Tune in next Thursday to see if you can defeat the experts in remembering what happened. We'll be right back.